In today's gaming landscape, there is no shortage of games to play. There are more games releasing now than ever before. As a result, it is that much more difficult for a game to make a good first impression. Even more so if the goal is to get you hooked in the first 10 seconds. Something as graphically sound as Guardians of the Galaxy failed to pique my interest until I actually started playing it. But the pixel art in Unpacking made me want to play it thanks to the simplicity of the visuals and its premise. Suffice to say that there are plenty of factors that come into play when it comes to making a strong impression in that little time the player has from the vast ocean of other distractions. Trek to Yomi is a game that had no problem at all grabbing my attention. Now that I have finally got my hands on the game and having finished playing through the story, I can say that this is easily the most polarizing experience I've had in a very long time. Let me tell you all about it. Hi, I'm Ishaq and this is the review of Trek to Yomi.
小僧、いかにしてわしを止める気だ。
拙者は侍じゃ。
喉をかっ切れ。
What immediately strikes you as soon as you launch the game is its visuals. It does not hide where its inspirations come from. Legendary filmmaker Akira Kurosawa's film have inspired generations of creators, and its high-contrast monochrome visual aesthetics have been faithfully recreated in Trek to Yomi. The main menu looks like it's been ripped off straight out of a title sequence from the movies of old times. And this visual style never ceases to amaze throughout the game's 5 to 6 hour runtime. This is largely thanks to the developers' commitment to the art style and how confidently they present it to us. Emphasis on present. You see, it is not just the absence of colors that makes this game as good as it does. There are some neat tricks the game employs in order to achieve the often mesmerizing visuals. Lighting, for example, has been used masterfully with scenes ranging from well-lit open areas to dark shadowy corridors in contrast. Volumetric fog and dust effects elevate the sense of atmosphere. Sometimes your encounters with foes play out as silhouettes, and use of fire against the dark of the night makes me want to stay in the moment and soak in the visuals on screen. Add to this some clever use of camera cuts and perspectives, coupled with film grain reminiscent of the old movies, and what you have is a sound example of what can come out of a team when they remain committed to an idea. Graphics aren't everything in a game, but Trek to Yomi highly benefits from its visuals. And that is a good thing because as good as the game looks and sounds, it has very little to offer outside of it. The game tells the story of one Hiroki, and it begins with a flashback from his younger days on his way to being a samurai. This sequence not only plays out as a prologue, setting things up for the journey ahead in the present, but also acts as a tutorial and eases the player into its unique visual style. Once we get back to the present though, it is your standard by-the-numbers tale of vengeance and honor, with a few twists on the way. Frankly, this feels like a missed opportunity, as the setting begs for a compelling narrative that could have been delivered with some more time and effort. That said, the story as a whole is okay, and there is more world building and lore peppered throughout the game for those willing to look for it. Which brings us to perhaps the least exciting part of the game, the role you play as a player. Trek to Yomi, in a sense, is Ghost of Tsushima in a Streets of Rage style game with the visual aesthetics of a Kurosawa film, which means a lot of side-scrolling samurai combat. Said combat sees you mostly chopping through your opponents with your trusty katana. As with many games in the genre, enemies are in abundance, and the game gives you a few handy tools to overcome your foes. A couple of strikes will get you through some of the enemies, while armored enemies need a more aggressive approach. Enemy AI is not the sharpest, but they can bring you down rather quickly if you're not paying attention, as it does not take too many strikes to bring Hiroki down. There is a parry system which opens up opportunities for attacks and a dodge roll that you can perform to evade ranged attacks like arrows. While in combat, performing any of these actions, including running, depletes the stamina meter, which when completely depleted makes Hiroki defenseless against incoming attacks for a small period of time. There are ranged weapons thrown into the mix like shurikens, bow and arrow, and a rather powerful but slow and sluggish feeling gun. Each have their own trade-offs, but they mix well into the flow of combat. All of this looks good on paper. In practice though, combat is just not up to the mark. None of the things I explained about gameplay really matter, as the game never really pushes the player for a strategic approach. There are different enemy types, but all of them can be tackled with the same string of attacks. Even boss fights do not demand much from the player in terms of strategy. They are largely the same type of fights, with the enemy now having a bigger health bar. Perhaps the biggest crime the game commits is how the combat feels. There is a certain weight to the punches I throw in games like Batman Arkham or Sleeping Dogs. The combat in Ghost of Tsushima is as satisfying as it is thanks to the tactile feel that it emulates. In the 2D side-scrolling genre, we have games like Final Fight way back from the SNES era that had a sense of heft in every punch and kick that we threw at the opponents. My point is, for a samurai game that has steel to steel clashing in each encounter, there is a ton of inspiration out there which can be used to make combat feel more tactile. But what we have here is none of those. And this is a missed opportunity and a huge letdown considering the effort put in the visuals and the way it has been executed. But enough rambling about combat. The game also encourages exploration, and there is a decent payoff for doing so in the form of collectibles, health and stamina upgrade, ammo, and opportunities to avoid an encounter or two. There are also environmental puzzles and dialogues with characters in the environment to punctuate the pace between combat scenarios. But keeping with the theme of everything else in the game bar the presentation, the game does not lean in on any of these elements to make the best of them. If it's not apparent yet, Trek to Yomi is a game that looks stunning with an interesting setting but is let down by a serviceable story with little depth and a gameplay that is just too bland. At its best, the game is a masterclass on how to employ visual elements like lighting and all the other bells and whistles to the best effects. At its worst, it offers little in terms of gameplay variety, making enemy encounters a chore as the game progresses. The game is perhaps best experienced as a backseat audience, with someone else at the controller while we enjoy its visual splendor. Which is a shame because there was an opportunity to create something truly special with Trek to Yomi. For people that don't mind a lack of variety, the game's visuals more than justify the cost, because frankly there is nothing quite like it. For the ones looking for a compelling gameplay experience, we may need to head back to Streets of Rage 4 or Ghost of Tsushima after giving this game a shot on Game Pass. And that was a review. So what is your thought on Trek to Yomi? Have you played it yet? What is your favorite samurai game? And what is your favorite 2D beat 'em up? Are visuals in Trek to Yomi enough for you to give it a shot? Sound off in the comments, let's have a conversation going. Until then, I'm Ishak and I'll see you on the next one. You take care, stay safe, and keep gaming.
わしを超えていくことはできる。
お前の仲間は同じように己を信じておったが、一人残らず死んだ。
わしを見てみろ。この槍を見よ。近寄ることもできぬわ。叩き切れ。